Working, you guys. Is something going right? Oh my god. Something's going right? Hello. What is working? Multi-streaming to YouTube. Thank fucking God. Hello, YouTube. Yes, that was very tense. I had to switch the software that I was using to multi-stream because it was causing a lot of crashes, causing a lot of OBS crashes, and potentially even causing the crashes that I've been experiencing where my whole computer just shuts down. That might also have been due to Stream Elements. So now I'm trying Atom, and we'll see how it goes. Hi, Rayshawn. Hello. Hello. Now, the downside is that Stream Elements, which I was using, had a built-in multi-chat widget so that I could see all the chatting all together in one place. This doesn't have that. I'm gonna have to find a separate plugin to do that. So I'm only going to be able to see chat, YouTube chat, if I look over at YouTube. So, yeah. Yeah. Well, I can pop out the chat at least and move it over here, but it's still looking at two different chats. Anyway, Trey, thank you for the lurk and for your kindness, and sleep well. Sleep well. Okay. Yes. We are coming in. Gross. I was gonna say, you know the saying we're coming in hot? That's obviously not it. I was gonna say we're coming in wet because I was all weepy earlier, but let's not say that either. It's been a day. Some tech issues, but luckily this is working. We're soggy. That's better than wet. Thank you. I feel really weird reading without my headphones on though. I don't know. Can I do this? It does have some other connotations, yeah. Yeah, true. Okay. It's been a rough... Kesiak, same. Oh my god. Too late, you already said it. I said that I was not going to say it though. Surely that is something. We're coming in damp? We're coming in moist? Oh dear. Blowing in dewy. That doesn't sound right. That does not sound right. Vaguely moldy. Okay, let's not get carried away. Coming in humid. Have you ever read Dandroid's Dream of Electric Sheep? No, I have not. Where is Dewey? At the library. So we're gonna read some more Wizard of Oz, because that's what we're gonna do. Okay. Coming in lubricated. My goodness. Okay. So our intrepid group of miscreants, which includes Betsy Bobbin and her mule / donkey Hank, the Shaggy Man and his mind-washing magnet, the Princess of Oogaboo, or sorry, Queen Anne and her army, the princess of the Rose Kingdom, who was exiled because she's not a man, they are trying to invade the Gnome Kingdom. Queen Anne, because she wants to conquer it and rule it, and then go on to conquer the rest of the world. And the Shaggy Man, because he wants to rescue his brother, who was abducted by Ruggedo, the Gnome King, aka the Metal Monarch. The Gnome King sent them through a tube to the other end of the world for a pointless adventure that didn't accomplish a lot, except for now they're back, but with a dragon. The private citizen, who's the ultimate ruler on the other side of the world, ordained that the Gnome King should be punished for sending people again and again through this tube, and has sent this young dragon to do the job. Now, the Queen Anne says, nah, let me do it because I have to conquer him. And the dragon's like, all right, you can try, but like, I'll stick around in case you fail, because you're probably going to fail, and then I'll do it. So that's where we're at. They are attacking the gnomes. The gnome army is all assembled. Yeah, that's where we're at. So if you are reading along with me, which, let's get that book command going. Okay. Let me pin that in Twitch chat, and let me pop it into the YouTube chats. There we go, and get those pinned. So if you would like to read along with me, you can find those links there where you can get this book for absolutely free. The real mod, yeah. Sean is not with us at the moment. I know. Sean is the absolute goat for getting everything all pinned and posted. We are also playing Wizard of Oz Bingo. And yeah, we are let me see. Because I tried to do a thing. Did it not? Where did I do the thing? Wait. Let's see if this will work. Haha. There we go. I got it hotkeyed so it should be showing up in both vertical and horizontal. Yay, we got the bingo board. So keep your eyes peeled for any of these things if we can check any new squares off the bingo board. Honestly, there's a few that like we probably could do, but I'm like, we're waiting for like a more extreme example. But did the key hurt when you touched it? What? 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 Okay. All right. So we are going to be starting with chapter 16. Didn't Glinda and Ozma get retconned as watching them all through the events of book 3 and 4 and doing nothing? Yeah. Ozma is just typically like, she's quite useless. Yeah. Ozma also is watching what's going on here, or Glinda, both of them. They know that the Shaggy Man's brother is there and that they're going to rescue him, and they're just like doing fuck all to help them on this mission. Except for that Ozma gave him his like pedophile magnet back. I don't know. I'm not. Okay. Hi, Violet Venom. You're not excited to meet the brother? Me neither. I feel like he's probably fine where he is, you know. Hi, Luna. Yes, I do remember. He did? Ah, Luna, that's so exciting. Congrats. Aw, I love that. Well, I hope it goes very well. Yay! Why did they let Shaggy take the damn love magnet with him? I don't know, because I don't know. Because he's not very, like, useful in other ways, maybe. Maybe she thought that's the only way that he could win. Also, Ramon, hello on YouTube. Hello. And yes, my apologies if I'm a little more behind in answering YouTube chats. I have switched over in my softwares, and I currently don't have a multi-chat widget, but hopefully by next stream I will have one. Okay, so we are picking up with Chapter 16, The Naughty Gnome. Shaggy Man had said nothing during the conversation between Queen Anne and Quox, for the simple reason that he did not consider the matter worth an argument. Safe within his pocket reposed the love magnet, which had never failed to win every heart. The gnomes, he knew, were not like the heartless roses, and therefore could be won to his side as soon as he exhibited the magic talisman. Shaggy's chief anxiety had begun to reach Ruggedo's kingdom, and now that the entrance lay before him, he was confident he would be able to rescue his lost brother. Let Anne and the dragon quarrel as to who should conquer the gnomes if they liked. Shaggy would let them try, and if they failed, he had the means of conquest in his pocket. But Anne was positive she could not fail, for she thought her army could do anything. So she called the officers together and told them how to act, and she also instructed Tik-Tok what to do and what to say. "Please, do not shoot your gun, except as a last resort," she added, "for I do not wish to be cruel or to shed any blood, unless it is absolutely necessary." "All right," replied Tik-Tok, "but I do not think Ruggedo would bleed if I filled him full of holes and put him in a cider press." Bro, the cider press was unnecessary. Damn. Like, that's overkill, Tik-Tok. He's just gonna shoot him and then just squish him. Just squish him. Hi, Rahul. Then the officers fell in line. The 4 generals abreast, and then the 4 colonels, and the 4 majors, and the 4 captains. They drew their glittering swords and commanded Tik-Tok to march, which he did. Twice he fell down, being tripped by the rough rocks, but when he struck the smooth path, he got along better. Into the gloomy mouth of the cavern entrance he stepped, without hesitation, and after him proudly pranced the officers and Queen Anne. The others held back a little, waiting to see what would happen. Of course, the Gnome King knew they were coming, and was prepared to receive them. Just within the rocky passage that led to the jeweled throne room was a deep pit, which was usually covered. Ruggedo had ordered the cover removed, and it now stood open, scarcely visible in the gloom. The pit was so large around that it nearly filled the passage, and there was barely room for one to walk around it by pressing close to the rock walls. This Tik-Tok did, for his copper eyes saw the pit clearly, and he avoided it. But the officers marched straight into the hole and tumbled in a heap on the bottom. An instant later, Queen Anne also walked into the pit, for she had her chin in the air and was careless where she placed her feet. Then one of the gnomes pulled a lever, which replaced the cover on the pit and made the officers of Oogaboo and their queen fast prisoners. As for Tik-Tok, he kept straight on to the cavern where Ruggedo sat in his throne, and there he faced the Gnome King and said,
"I hereby conquer you in the name of Queen Anne, so forth, of Oogaboo, whose army I am, and I declare that you are her prisoner."
Ruggedo laughed at him.
"Where is this famous queen?" he asked.
"She'll be here in a minute,"
said Tik-Tok.
"Perhaps she stopped to tie her shoestring."
"Now, see here, Tik-Tok," began the Gnome King in a stern voice. "I've had enough of this nonsense. Your queen and her officers are all prisoners, having fallen into my power. So, perhaps you'll tell me what you mean to do."
"My orders were to conquer you,"
replied Tik-Tok.
"and my machinery has done the best it knows how to carry out those orders."
Ruggedo pounded on his gong, and Calico appeared, followed closely by General Guff.
"Take this copper man into the shops and set him to work hammering gold," commanded the king. "Being run by machinery, he ought to be a steady worker. He ought never to have been made, but since he exists, I shall hereafter put him to good use."
"If you try to capture me,"
said Tik-Tok,
"I shall fight."
"Oh, don't do that," exclaimed General Guff earnestly, "for it will be useless to resist, and you might hurt someone."
But Tik-Tok raised his gun and took aim, and not knowing what damage the gun might do, the gnomes were afraid to face it. While he was thus defying the Gnome King and his high officials, Betsy Bobbin rode calmly into the royal cavern, seated upon the back of Hank, the mule. The little girl had grown tired of waiting for something to happen, and so had come to see if Ruggedo had been conquered.
"Nails and nuggets!"
roared the king.
"How dare you bring that beast here and enter my presence unannounced?"
"Well, there wasn't anybody to announce me," replied Betsy. "I guess your folks were all busy. Are you conquered yet?"
"No!"
shouted the king, almost beside himself with rage.
"Then please give me something to eat, for I'm awful hungry," said the girl. "You see, this conquering business is a good deal like waiting for a circus parade. It takes a long time to get around and don't amount to much anyhow."
This girl, she's a sociopath. Hi, Leonardo. The gnomes were so much astonished at this speech that for a time they could only glare at her silently, not finding words to reply. The king finally recovered the use of his tongue and said,
"Earth crawler, this insolence to my majesty shall be your death warrant. You are an ordinary mortal, and to stop a mortal from living is so easy a thing to do that I will not keep you waiting half so long as you did for my conquest."
"Well, I'd rather you wouldn't stop me from living," remarked Betsy, getting off Hank's back and standing beside him. "And it would be a pretty cheap king who killed a visitor while she was hungry. If you'll give me something to eat, I'll talk this killing business over with you afterward. Only, I warn you now that I don't approve of it, and never will."
Her coolness and lack of fear impressed the Gnome King, although he bore an intense hatred toward all mortals.
What do you wish to eat?
He asked gruffly.
Oh, a ham sandwich would do. Or perhaps a couple of hard-boiled eggs. Eggs!
Shrieked the 3 gnomes who were present, shuddering till their teeth chattered.
What's the matter? Asked Betsy wonderingly. Are eggs as high here as they are at home?
See, this is relevant to Easter.
Cough,
said the king in an agitated voice, turning to his general.
let us destroy this rash mortal at once. Seize her and take her to the slimy cave and lock her in.
Guff glanced at Tik-Tok, whose gun was still pointed, but just then Calico stole softly behind the copper man and kicked his knee joints so that they suddenly bent forward and tumbled Tik-Tok to the floor, his gun falling from his grasp. The slimy cave, not her slimy cave. You guys! Oh, Ash, thank you for the lurk over on YouTube. Thank you. Take me to the slimy cave and lock me in. Okay. Alright. Then Guff, seeing Tik-Tok helpless, made a grab at Betsy. At the same time, Hank's heels shot out and caught the general just where his belt was buckled. He rose into the air swift as a cannonball, struck the Gnome King fairly, and flattened his majesty against the wall of rock on the opposite side of the cavern. Together they fell to the floor in a dazed and crumpled condition, seeing which Calico whispered to Betsy,
Come with me, quick! I will save you.
She looked into Calico's face inquiringly, and thought he seemed honest and good-natured, so she decided to follow him. He led her and the mule through several passages and into a small cavern, very nicely and comfortably furnished.
This is my own room, said he, but you are quite welcome to use it. Wait here a minute, and I'll get you something to eat.
When Calico returned, he brought a tray containing some broiled mushrooms, a loaf of mineral bread, and some petroleum butter. Well, the butter Betsy could not eat, but the bread was good, and the mushrooms delicious.
Here's the door key, said Calico, and you'd better lock yourself in. Won't you let Polychrome and the Rose Princess come here too? She asked. I'll see. Where are they? I don't know. I left them outside, said Betsy.
Betsy, you're useless. Hi, Damdan. Hello. People eat Vaseline. You should not be eating Vaseline. Don't eat Vaseline. Don't do it. It's a bad idea. But yeah, surely petroleum butter would be similar to petroleum jelly. Wait, could you make a sandwich with petroleum butter and petroleum jelly? And it would be like a PB&J, but all petroleum? It'll really lube up the insides.
Well, if you hear 3 raps on the door, open it, said Calico, but don't let anyone in unless they give the 3 raps.
All right, promised Betsy. And when Calico left the cozy cavern, she closed and locked the door. In the meantime, Anne and her officers, finding themselves prisoners in the pit, had shouted and screamed. I'm sorry. I saw Dweeb's message right then. That's how you end up with a slimy cave. damn. Okay. Finding themselves prisoners in the pit, had shouted and screamed until they were tired out, but no one had come to their assistance. It was very dark and damp in the pit, and they could not climb out because the walls were higher than their heads, and the cover was on. And the queen was first angry, and then annoyed, and then discouraged. But the officers were only afraid. Every one of the poor fellows heartily wished he was back in Oogaboo, caring for his orchard, and some were so unhappy that they began to reproach Anne for causing them all this trouble and danger. Finally, the queen sat down in the bottom of the pit and leaned her back against the wall. By good luck, her sharp elbow touched a secret spring in the wall, and a big, flat rock swung inwards. Anne fell over backward, but the next instant she jumped up and cried to the others, "A passage! A passage! Follow me, my brave men! We may yet escape!" Then she began to crawl through the passage, which was as dark and dank as the pit, and the officers followed her in single file. Then she began to crawl. Oh, wait. Yes. They crawled, and they crawled, and they kept on crawling, for the passage was not big enough to allow them to stand upright. Oh, it turned this way and twisted that, sometimes like a corkscrew and sometimes zigzag, but seldom ran for long in a straight line.
"It will never end! Never!"
moaned the officers, who were rubbing all the skin off their knees on the rough rocks. "It must end," retorted Anne courageously, "or it never would have been made. We don't know where it will lead us to, but any place is better than that loathsome pit." So she crawled on, and the officers crawled on, and while they were crawling through this awful underground passage, Polychrome and Shaggy and Files and the Rose Princess, who were standing outside the entrance to Ruggedo's domains, were wondering what had become of them. Getting ready for bed. Oh, hi, Red Boy. Aw, well, sleep well. Thanks for saying hi. It's good to see you. Yeah, now there's a slimy passage as well as a slimy cave. Chapter 17. A Tragic Transformation.
"Oh, don't let us worry," said Shaggy to his companions, "for it may take the queen some time to conquer the Metal Monarch, as Tik-Tok has to do everything in his slow, mechanical way."
"Do you suppose they are likely to fail?" asked the Rose Princess.
"Why, I do indeed," replied Shaggy. "His Gnome King is really a powerful fellow and has a legion of gnomes to assist him, whereas our bold queen commands a clockwork man and a band of faint-hearted officers."
"She ought to have let Quox do the conquering," said Polychrome, dancing lightly upon a point of rock and fluttering her beautiful draperies. "But perhaps the dragon was wise to let her go first, for when she fails to conquer Ruggedo, she may become more modest in her ambition." "Where is the dragon now?" inquired Ozga. "Up there on the rocks," replied Files. "Look, my dear, you may see him from here. He said he would take a little nap while we were mixing up with Ruggedo, and he added that after we had gotten into trouble, he would wake up and conquer the Gnome King in a jiffy, and his master, the Jinjin, has ordered him to do."
"Oh, Quox means well," said Shaggy, "but I do not think we shall need his services, for just as soon as I am satisfied that Queen Anne and her army have failed to conquer Ruggedo, I shall enter the caverns and show the king My love magnet. That he cannot resist. Therefore the conquest will be made with ease.
This speech of Shaggy Man's was overheard by the long-eared hearer, who was at that moment standing by Ruggedo's side. For when the king and Guff had recovered from Hank's kick and had picked themselves up, their first act was to turn Tik-Tok on his back and put a heavy diamond on top of him so that he could not get up again. Then they carefully put his gun in a corner of the cavern, and the king sent Guff to fetch the long-eared hearer. Now, the hearer was still angry at Ruggedo for breaking his ear, but he acknowledged the Gnome King to be his master and was ready to obey his commands. Therefore he repeated Shaggy's speech to the king, who at once realized that his kingdom was in grave danger. Ruggedo knew of the love magnet and its powers, and was horrified at the thought that Shaggy might show him the magic talisman and turn all the hatred in his heart into love. Ruggedo was proud of his hatred and abhorred love of any sort.
Really, said he, I'd rather be conquered and lose my wealth and my kingdom than gaze at that awful love magnet. What can I do to prevent the Shaggy Man from taking it out of his pocket?
Calico returned to the cavern in time to overhear this question, and, being a loyal gnome and eager to serve his king, he answered by saying,
"If we can bind the Shaggy Man's arms tight to his body, he could not get the love magnet out of his pocket."
True,
cried the king in delight at this easy solution of the problem.
Get at once a dozen gnomes with ropes and place them in the passage where they can seize and bind Shaggy as soon as he enters.
This Calico did, and meanwhile the watchers outside the entrance were growing more and more uneasy about their friends. Hi, Mix Boy.
"I don't worry so much about the Oogaboo people,"
said Polychrome, who had grown sober with waiting and perhaps a little nervous.
"For they could not be killed, even though Ruggedo might cause them much suffering and perhaps destroy them entirely. But we should not have allowed Betsy and Hank to go alone into the caverns. The little girl is mortal and possesses no magic powers whatever. So if Ruggedo captures her, well, she'll be wholly at his mercy."
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of, getting a little too into semantics there. It's well, you can't die. You can just be destroyed utterly. Yeah, you'll just be a pile of dust, and every speck of dust will be alive and sentient. And then you'll be, blown all around the world and never be able to be put back together again. But you won't be dead, so... People die when they're killed. Yeah, but not people who were born in the fairylands. So Queen Anne and all of her army cannot die. That's what ghosts are made of, oh god. A Taco Cat, thank you for the 100 biddies. Thank you. Hi, Phoenix. Okay.
That is indeed true, replied Shaggy. Why, I wouldn't like to have anything happen to dear little Betsy, so I believe I'll go in right away and put an end to all this worry.
Oh, we may as well go with you, asserted Files. For by no means of the love magnet, you can soon bring the Gnome King to reason. So it was decided to wait no longer. Shaggy walked through the entrance first, and after him came the others. They had no thought of danger to themselves, and Shaggy who was going along with his hands thrust into his pockets, was much surprised when a rope shot out from the darkness and twined around his body, pinning down his arms so securely that he could not even withdraw his hands from the pockets. Then appeared several grinning gnomes who speedily tied knots in the ropes and then led the prisoner along the passage to the cavern. No attention was paid to the others, but Files and the princess followed on after Shaggy, determined not to desert their friend and hoping that an opportunity might arise to rescue him. Welcome in, Goes the Goose. Hello. Thank you for the raid. Hello, raiders. Hi. Welcome, welcome. Goose, how was your stream? What were you guys getting up to? Hi, Jack. Hello. Honk, honk. We have a honk command here. Oh my goodness, I love geese. Hi, Raven. Hi, Hannah. Welcome in, you guys. Oh my goodness. What were you guys doing tonight? Mixed Boy, thank you for that 25 stream streak. Heck yeah. You were playing Slay the Spire and now you're here. Oh, nice. Well, you guys make sure you go and drop a follow and check out Goes the Goose. Can we gamble here? I don't have that system set up, sorry. But welcome in, you guys. If you are new here, hello, I'm Faolkor. We do a mixture of traditional ASMR triggers and story time. So you've obviously come into the reading section. We're currently reading Tik-Tok of Oz, which is book number 8 in the Wizard of Oz series, and is very weird. They're currently trying to take down the Gnome King. They're addicted to gambling in your streams. Oh, well, thank you again so much for choosing to come right into here and hang out. Goose, please feel free to raid and run if you need to. Make sure you're taking care of yourself after your own stream. But thank you so much. It's awesome to have you guys. We play Wizard of Oz bingo. So you can see we've already checked a few things off so far. We've checked off Sussy Mind Control. They go to a new fairyland. Retconning canon events. The love magnet interferes in some way. The Gnome King physically attacks his followers. Horrors beyond comprehension. And a threat of or attempt of execution. Yeah, because we, not back to back, but we've been reading through this series for the past while, and, you start to see some patterns emerge. So we started playing bingo. But overall, we read a wide variety of genres here, so the love magnet is quite the MacGuffin. It really is. It really is. Oh, Ghost, thank you for the follow. Let me drop you a follow as well. There we go. Nice. Well, you guys, get cozy. Yes, we have a whole group of people. They're not technically in Oz at the moment. They're in the Gnome Kingdom. They're trying to take down the Gnome King. They've all got their own reasons. It's not going very well. Hi, Tyra. Okay. Okay. As for Polychrome, as soon as she saw that trouble had overtaken Shaggy, she turned and ran lightly back through the passage and out of the entrance. Then she easily leapt from rock to rock until she paused beside the great dragon, who lay fast asleep. "Wake up, Quox!" she cried. "It is time for you to act." But Quox did not wake up. He lay as one in a trance, absolutely motionless, with his enormous eyes tight closed. The eyelids had big silver scales on them, like all the rest of his body. Polychrome might have thought Quox was dead, had she not known that dragons do not die easily, or had she not observed his huge body swelling as he breathed. She picked up a piece of rock and pounded against his eyelids with it, saying, "Wake up, Quox! Wake up!" But he would not waken. "Dear me, how unfortunate," sighed the lovely Rainbow's daughter. "I wonder what is the best and surest way to waken a dragon. All our friends may be captured and destroyed while this great beast lies asleep." She walked around Quox 2 or 3 times, trying to discover some tender place on his body where a thump or a punch might be felt. But he lay extended along the rocks with his chin flat upon the ground and his legs drawn underneath his body. And all that one could see was his thick, sky-blue skin, thicker than that of a rhinoceros, and his silver scales. Then, despairing at last of wakening the beast, and worrying over the fate of her friends, Polychrome again ran down to the entrance and hurried along the passage into the Gnome King's cavern. Here she found Ruggedo, lolling in his throne and smoking a long pipe. Beside him stood General Guff and Calico, and ranged before the king were the Rose Princess, Files, and the Shaggy Man. Tik-Tok still lay upon the floor, weighted down by the big diamond. Ruggedo was now in a more contented frame of mind. One by one he had met the invaders and easily captured them. The dreaded love magnet was indeed in Shaggy's pocket, only a few feet away from the king. But Shaggy was powerless to show it, and unless Ruggedo's eyes beheld the talisman, it could not affect him. Which, again, is a total retcon for this book. The book where this object was introduced, he did not have to pull it out of his pocket. He just had to have it on his person. As for Betsy Bobbin and her mule, he believed Calico had placed them in the slimy cave, while Anne and her officers he thought safely imprisoned in the pit. Ruggedo had no fear of Files or Ozga, but to be on the safe side he had ordered golden handcuffs placed upon their wrists. These did not cause them any great annoyance, but prevented them from making an attack, had they been inclined to do so. The Gnome King, thinking himself wholly master of the situation, was laughing and jeering at his prisoners when Polychrome, exquisitely beautiful and dancing like a ray of light, entered the cavern.
"Oh ho!" cried the king. "A rainbow underground, eh?"
And then he stared hard at Polychrome, and still harder. And then he sat up and pulled the wrinkles out of his robe and arranged his whiskers.
"On my word," said he, "you are a very captivating creature. Moreover, I perceive you are a fairy."
"I am Polychrome, the Rainbow's daughter," she said proudly.
"Well," replied Ruggedo, "I like you. The others I hate. I hate everybody. But you. Wouldn't you like to live always in this beautiful cavern, Polychrome? See the jewels that stud the walls, have every tint and color of your rainbow, and they are not so elusive. I'll have fresh dewdrops gathered for your feasting every day, and you shall be queen of all my gnomes, and pull Calico's nose whenever you like."
"No, thank you," laughed Polychrome. "My home is in the sky, and I'm only on a visit to this solid, sordid earth. But tell me, Ruggedo, why my friends have been wound with cords and bound with chains?"
"They threatened me," answered Ruggedo. "The fools do not know how powerful I am."
Nomad, hi. Hi, Damon, how you doing? Hello. And DJ, thank you for being over on the YouTube as well.
"Well, then, since they are now helpless, why not release them and send them back to the Earth's surface?
Because I hate them, and mean to make 'em suffer for their invasion. But I'll make a bargain with you, sweet Polly. Remain here and live with me, and I'll set all these people free. You shall be my daughter, or my wife, or my aunt, or grandmother, whichever you like.
What?
Only stay to brighten my gloomy kingdom and make me happy.
Bro, what? What? It was bad enough in the last book we read where the guy was like, let me adopt you. And then he's like, oh, you want to get married? Yeah, let's get married. Like, that was bad enough. But now he's like, you could also be my grandma if you want. He doesn't care. Any kind of relationship. It was so good, Artax. Oh, they're very bizarre taco, yeah.
Polychrome looked at him wonderingly. Then she turned to Shaggy and asked, "Are you sure he hasn't seen the love magnet?"
I'm positive, answered Shaggy. You seem to be something of a love magnet yourself, Polychrome.
Oh.
She laughed again and said to Ruggedo, "Not even to rescue my friends would I live in your kingdom, nor could I endure for long the society of such a wicked monster as you."
Oh, you forget, retorted the king, scowling darkly, that you also are in my power.
Not so, Ruggedo. The Rainbow's Daughter is beyond the reach of your spite or malice.
Seize her!
Suddenly shouted the king, and General Guff sprang forward to obey. Polychrome stood quite still, yet when Guff attempted to clutch her, his hands met in air. And now the Rainbow's Daughter was in another part of the room, as smiling and composed as before.
Several times Guff endeavored to capture her, and Ruggedo even came down from his throne to assist his general. But never could they lay hands upon the lovely Sky Fairy, who flitted here and there with the swiftness of light and constantly defied them with her merry laughter as she evaded their efforts. We've never seen her teleport before. This is not the first book she's been in. Christ. So, after a time, they abandoned the chase, and Ruggedo returned to his throne and wiped the perspiration from his face with a finely woven handkerchief of cloth of gold.
"Well," said Polychrome, "what do you intend to do now?"
I'm going to have some fun, to repay me for all my bother,
replied the Gnome King. Then he said to Calico,
"Summon the executioners."
Calico at once withdrew, and presently returned with a score of gnomes, all of whom were nearly as evil-looking as their hated master. They bore great golden pincers, and prods of silver, and clamps and chains and various wicked-looking instruments, all made of precious metals and set with diamonds and rubies.
"Now, Pang,"
said Ruggedo, addressing the leader of the executioners,
"fetch the army of Oogaboo and their queen from the pit and torture them here in my presence, as well as in the presence of their friends. Oh, it will be great sport."
"I hear your majesty, and I obey your majesty,"
answered Pang, and went with his gnomes into the passage. In a few minutes he returned and bowed to Ruggedo.
"They're all gone," said he.
"Gone?"
exclaimed the Gnome King.
"Gone where?"
"Well, they left no address, your majesty, but
but they're not in the pit.
Picks and puddles, roared the king. Who took the cover off?
No one, said Pang. The cover was there, but the prisoners were not under it.
Hi, Anthony. Aw, thanks for popping in to say hi. I hope you had a good Easter as well, and that you sleep well. Also, hi, Buggersburg. Hello. Hello.
In that case, snarled the king, trying to control his disappointment, go to the slimy cave and fetch hither the girl and her donkey. And while we are torturing them, Calico must take 100 gnomes and search for the escaped prisoners, the Queen of Oogaboo and her officers. If he does not find them, I will torture Calico.
Calico went away looking sad and disturbed, for he knew the king was cruel and unjust enough to carry out this threat. Pang and the executioners also went away in another direction, but when they came back, Betsy Bobbin was not with them, nor was Hank.
There is no one in the slimy cave, Your Majesty, reported Pang.
Jumping jelly cakes,
Screamed the king.
Another escape. Are you sure you found the right cave?
There is but one slimy cave, and there is no one in it,
returned Pang positively. Ruggedo was beginning to be alarmed as well as angry. However, these disappointments but made him the more vindictive, and he cast an evil look at the other prisoners and said,
Never mind the girl and the donkey. Here are 4 at least who cannot escape my vengeance. Let me see. I believe I'll change my mind about Tik-Tok. Have the gold crucible heated to a white, seething heat, and then we'll dump the copper man into it and melt him up.
But Your Majesty,
protested Calico, who had returned to the room after sending 100 gnomes to search for the Oogaboo people.
You must remember that Tik-Tok is a very curious and interesting machine. You would be ashamed to deprive the world of such a clever contrivance.
Hi, Brian. Hi, Powder.
Say another word, and you'll go into the furnace with him,
roared the king.
I'm getting tired of you, Calico, and the first thing you know, I'll turn you into a potato and make Saratoga chips of you.
The fuck is a Saratoga chip? Is that just a potato chip? The original kettle-style potato chip. I've never heard them called Saratoga chips in my life. Huh. Apparently it's a brand? It's a brand of kettle chip. Shit. Okay. There we go. How does he know about a kettle chip invented in New York? Well, he snatched Shaggy Man's brother from a mine shaft in, like, Colorado. So he gets around underground. I don't really know how he knows about potato chips, but theoretically he could tunnel underneath New York. I don't know.
The next to consider, he added more mildly, is the Shaggy Man. As he owns the love magnet, I think I'll transform him into a dove, and then we can practice shooting at him with Tik-Tok's gun. Now, this is a very interesting ceremony, and I beg you all to watch me closely and see that I've nothing up my sleeve.
He came out of his throne to stand before the Shaggy Man, and then he waved his hands palm downwards in 7 semicircles over his victim's head, saying in a low but clear tone of voice the magic wugwa.
Waddy, eedy, idey, oody, oody, ooey, oo. I do, idey, ida, woo.
The effect of this well-known sorcery was instantaneous. Instead of the shaggy man, a pretty dove lay fluttering upon the floor, its wings confined by tiny cords wound around them. Ruggedo gave an order to Pang, who cut the cords with a pair of scissors. Being hands palm downward... Being freed, the dove quickly flew upward and alighted on the shoulder of the Rose Princess, who stroked it tenderly. Yeah, they should leave him as a dove. Sergeant Styx, hello, welcome back. How are you doing? Ash, aw, thank you. Thank you, that's very sweet of you. I hope you have a wonderful sleep. Thanks for hanging out.
Very good,
cried Ruggedo, rubbing his hands gleefully together.
One enemy is out of my way, and now for the others.
Perhaps my readers should be warned not to attempt the above transformation, for although the exact magical formula has been described, it is unlawful in all civilized countries for anyone to transform a person into a dove by muttering the words Ruggedo used. There were no laws to prevent the Gnome King from performing this transformation, but if it should be attempted in any other country, and the magic worked, the magician would be severely punished. When Polychrome saw Shaggy Man transformed into a dove and realized that Ruggedo was about to do something as dreadful to the princess and Files, and that Tik-Tok would soon be melted in a crucible, she turned and ran from the cavern, through the passage, and back to the place where Quox lay asleep. End of chapter. Oh my goodness. Alright. Well. Oh, Artax, thank you for the 100 biddies. I guess we should read another. Chapter 18. A Clever Conquest. The great dragon still had his eyes closed, and was even snoring in a manner that resembled distant thunder. But Polychrome was now desperate, because any further delay meant the destruction of her friends. She seized the pearl necklace, to which was attached the great locket, and jerked it with all her strength. The result was encouraging. Quox stopped snoring and his eyelids flickered. So Polychrome jerked again and again, till till slowly the great lids raised and the dragon looked at her steadily. I am Fidge, and it does seem to be working. The only thing is that I need to find a separate multi-chat widget so that I can combine all the chats. But otherwise, it seems to be working. Yeah. Tentative thumbs up. Okay. Said he, in a sleepy tone. Wait, what was... Okay. He had a gravelly voice, but he was like he's a young dragon. Okay. What's the matter, little rainbow? Come quick.
exclaimed Polychrome. "Ruggedo has captured all our friends and is about to destroy them."
Well, well, said Quox. I suspected that would happen. Step a little out of my path, my dear, and I'll make a rush for the Gnome King's cavern. She fell back a few steps, and Quox raised himself on his stout legs, whisked his long tail, and in an instant had slid down the rocks and made a dive through the entrance. Hi, Slava. Hello. Along the passage he swept, nearly filling it with his immense body, and now he poked his head into the jeweled cavern of Ruggedo. But the king had long since made arrangements to capture the dragon, whenever he might appear. No sooner did Quox stick his head into the room than a thick chain fell from above and encircled his neck. Then the ends of the chain were drawn tight, for in an adjoining cavern 1,000 gnomes were pulling on them, and so the dragon could advance no further toward the king. He could not use his teeth or his claws, and as his body was still in the passage, he had not room to strike his foes with his terrible tail. Hi, Sen. Yeah, poor dragon. Not okay. Was the setup easier than SE Live? Not. It was about the same, maybe? Yeah. You sound good sound. You can sleep hearing. Oh, Slava. Well, I hope you have some very good sleep. Hi, Floral. What? Girl. That's crazy. That's a crazy statement. But happy Easter. Okay. Ruggedo was delighted with the success of his stratagem. Okay, if this story ends with Polychrome having to agree to be his wife or daughter or aunt or grandmother just to save everyone, I'm going to be so upset. He had just transformed the Rose Princess into a fiddle and was about to transform Files into a fiddle bow when the dragon appeared to interrupt him. So he called out,
Welcome, my dear Quox, to my royal entertainment. Since you are here, you shall witness some very neat magic. And after I have finished with Files and Tik-Tok, I mean to transform you into a tiny lizard, one of the chameleon sort, and you shall live in my cavern and amuse me.
Pardon me for contradicting your majesty, returned Quox in a quiet voice, but I don't believe you'll perform any more magic.
Eh? Why not?
Asked the king in surprise. There's a reason, said Quox. Do you see this ribbon around my neck?
Yes, and I'm astonished that a dignified dragon would wear such a silly thing.
Do you see it plainly? Persisted the dragon, with a little chuckle of amusement.
I do,
declared Ruggedo. Then you no longer possess any magical powers, and are as helpless as a clam, asserted Quox. My great master, Tatiti Hoochoo, the Jin, enchanted this ribbon in such a way that whenever your majesty looked upon it, all knowledge of magic would desert you instantly, nor will any magical formula you can remember ever perform your bidding.
Pooh, well, I don't believe a word of it,
cried Ruggedo, half frightened nevertheless. Then he turned toward Files and tried to transform him into a fiddle bow. But he could not remember the right words or the right pass of the hands, and after several trials, he finally gave up the attempt. By this time, the Gnome King was so alarmed that he was secretly shaking in his shoes.
I told you not to anger Tititi Hoochoo, grumbled Calico, and now you see the result of your disobedience.
Ruggedo promptly threw his scepter at his royal chamberlain, who dodged it with his usual cleverness, and then he said, with an attempt to swagger,
Never mind. I don't need magic to enable me to destroy these invaders. Fire and the sword will do the business, and I am still king of the gnomes, and lord and master of the underground kingdom.
Again, I beg to differ with your majesty, said Quox. The great Jinjin commands you to depart instantly from this kingdom and seek the earth's surface, where you will wander for all time to come, without a home or country, without a friend or follower, and without any more riches than you can carry with you in your pockets. The great Jinjin is so generous that he will allow you to fill your pockets with jewels or gold, but you must take nothing more.
Ruggedo now stared at the dragon in amazement.
Does Tititi Hoochoo condemn me to such a fate?
He asked in a hoarse voice.
He does,
said Quox.
Just for throwing a few strangers down the forbidden tube.
Just for that, repeated Quox in a stern, gruff voice.
Well, I won't do it. Your crazy old Jinjin can't make me do it either,
declared Ruggedo.
I intend to remain here, king of the gnomes, until the end of the world, and I defy your Tititi Hoochoo and all his fairies, as well as his clumsy messenger, whom I have been obliged to chain up.
The dragon smiled again, but it was not the sort of smile that made Ruggedo feel very happy. Instead, there was something so cold and merciless in the dragon's expression that the condemned gnome king trembled and was sick at heart. And there was little comfort for Ruggedo in the fact that the dragon was now chained, although he had boasted of it. He glared at the immense head of Quox as if fascinated, and there was fear in the old king's eyes as he watched his enemy's movements. Floral, thank you for the streak. Thank you. For the dragon was now moving. Not abruptly, but as if he had something to do and was about to do it. Very deliberately he raised one claw, touched the catch of the great jeweled locket that was suspended around his neck, and at once it opened wide. Nothing much happened at first. Half a dozen... let me try that again, sorry. Nothing much happened at first. Half a dozen hen's eggs rolled out upon the floor, and then the locket closed with a sharp click. But the effect upon the gnomes of this simple thing was astounding. General Guff, Calico, Pang, and his band of executioners were all standing close to the door that led to the vast series of underground caverns which constituted the dominions of the gnomes. And as soon as they saw the eggs, they raised a chorus of frantic screams and rushed through the door, slamming it in Ruggedo's face and placing a heavy bronze bar across it. Ruggedo, dancing with terror and uttering loud cries, now leapt upon the seat of his throne to escape the eggs, which had rolled steadily toward him. Perhaps these eggs, sent by the wise and crafty Tititi Hoochoo, were in some way enchanted, for they all rolled directly after Ruggedo, and when they reached the throne where he had taken refuge, they began rolling up the legs to the seat. This was too much for the king to bear. His horror of eggs was real and absolute, and he made a leap from the throne to the center of the room and then ran to a far corner. The eggs followed, rolling slowly but steadily in his direction. Ruggedo threw his scepter at them, and then his ruby crown, and then he drew off his heavy golden sandals and hurled these at the advancing eggs. But the eggs dodged every missile and continued to draw nearer. The king stood trembling, his eyes staring in terror, until they were but half a yard distant. Then, with an agile leap, he jumped clear over them and made a rush for the passage that led to the outer entrance. Of course, the dragon was in his way, being chained in the passage with his head in the cavern. But when he saw the king making toward him, he crouched as low as he could and dropped his chin to the floor, leaving a small space between his body and the roof of the passage. Ruggedo did not hesitate for an instant. Impelled by fear, he leapt to the dragon's nose and then scrambled to his back, where he succeeded in squeezing himself through the opening. After the head was past, there was more room, and he slid along the dragon's scales to his tail and then ran as fast as his legs would carry him to the entrance. Not pausing here, so great was his fright, the king dashed on down the mountain path. But before he had gone very far, he stumbled and fell. Now, when he picked himself up, he observed that no one was following him, and while he recovered his breath, he happened to think of the decree of the Jinjin, that he should be driven from his kingdom and made a wanderer on the face of the earth. Well, here he was, driven from his cavern, in truth, driven by those dreadful eggs. But he would go back and defy them. He would not submit to losing his precious kingdom and his tyrannical powers, all because Titi Hoochoo had said he must. So, although still afraid, Ruggedo nerved himself to creep back along the path to the entrance. And when he arrived there, he saw the 6 eggs lying in a row just before the arched opening. At first he paused a safe distance away to consider the case, for the eggs were now motionless. While he was remembering what could be done, he remembered there was a magical charm which would destroy the eggs and render them harmless to gnomes. There were 9 passes to be made and 6 verses of incantation to be recited, but Ruggedo knew them all. Now that he had ample time to be exact, he carefully went through the entire ceremony. But nothing happened. The eggs did not disappear as he had expected, so he repeated the charm a second time. When that also failed, he remembered, with a moan of despair, that his magic power had been taken away from him, and in the future, he could do no more than any common mortal. And there were the eggs, forever barring him from the kingdom which he had ruled so long with absolute sway. He threw rocks at them, but could not hit a single egg. He raved and scolded and tore his hair and beard and danced in helpless passion, but that did nothing to avert the just judgment of the Jinjin, which Ruggedo's own evil deeds had brought upon him. From this time on, he was an outcast, a wanderer upon the face of the earth, and he had even forgotten to fill his pockets with gold and jewels before he fled from his former kingdom. End of chapter. Yeah, this ended up being very apropos for Easter. Yes, indeed. Oh, really, Shay? It doesn't say that any frames have dropped. That might have just been on your end. You almost feel sorry for the Metal Monarch? Yeah, if he wasn't such a dick. And honestly, I actually think that Tatiti Huchu's punishment is over the top because he's just punishing him for sending people through a tube. And I feel like that's outsized. But Rugido has been a horrible tyrant. So he does deserve it, but not for the reason that he was punished. Okay. Well, I'm kind of wondering about wrapping up. Is this a shorter read today? But I did say that it might be a shorter read today. Yeah. Taco Cat, thank you for the 100 biddies. Yeah, just a few chapters tonight. But it also, I love that it was all about the eggs. Ended up being very, loosely Easter themed. Loosely Easter themed. Which is why I made my stream title on Twitch, The Gnome King Hates Easter. Yeah, I don't think we got anything for the bingo. But unless, do we count like casual kidnapping? I don't know. I don't know if that counts as kidnapping or not. You don't feel so bad about having scrambled eggs this morning. Oh my god, Fidge. Woof. Yeah, we've got here, let me turn on the bingo. We do have... Okay, Tik-Tok did not wind down at a dramatic moment. He got pinned beneath a very heavy diamond. So... there is nonchalance at taking away bodily autonomy, which I guess trapping people or turning them into objects. I mean, that is taking away bodily autonomy. To turn someone into a fiddle, right? Yeah, like that is very much so, right? Okay, let's tick that off then. Okay. Yes, nonchalance at taking away bodily autonomy. The dove is an improvement. I'm kind of hoping that he can't be turned back, but at the same time, I feel bad for the Rose Princess, and hopefully she can, so... Hi, Hadoken! Hello! Hello, hello. Let's see. Yeah, and I don't know about casual kidnapping. Like, kidnapping and imprisonment is different, right? Like, they got captured and tied up. But that's not really the same, right? Just rose from the bed. Oh, well, good morning. Hello. Hello. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, we at least got one. Okay, cool. I didn't think we needed one specifically for erasing memories or minds. We don't have that, but we have the sussy mind control. for the love magnet. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well then, we are going to be wrapping things up on YouTube. Thank you to everyone who watched on YouTube. Thank you so much. Aw, thanks for those hearts. Yeah, bit of a shorter session, but we will be back on Tuesday night to read more of this. We'll probably be finishing this book on Thursday night. Those are the next 2 streams. We'll be going a little bit longer over on Twitch. So, you know, if you want some more like ASMR style content, make sure to be following there. But yes, if you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe on YouTube, maybe drop a like, all that good stuff. Yeah, and I'm so thrilled that the multi-streaming thing seemed to work well. So yay, that's great. Okay, all right. Bye YouTube. Bye YouTube.